Hey guys, welcome to the CO visit. Colin here, and today, because of the warm weather, I've got my trusty soda. Now in Minnesota, we don't have soda; we call it pop. But anyway, cheers. Let's clink glasses now that we can. Well, want to appreciate and thank everybody for clicking on this video, being here with me, and remember that you can always like and subscribe to the video. There's the super thanks down below. Support's always appreciated. Thank you. Well, what I want to talk about today, to get right into our topic, is this whole issue with the Jehovah's Witnesses and participation in politics, voting, military service, all that stuff. And it's interesting that when you look at, first of all, why they don't take part in those things, which really is a big paradox, because you do research into the organization is actually very politically active in many ways, and yet they tell their members not to be. Of course, makes perfect sense from a high control group. You want to control your followers, so you give them this idea that they're separated from everybody else, they're not a part of the world, and that gives them this idea like, oh, we're special. Psychology. But why do they teach that? Well, they base it around some of the words of Jesus Christ. And of course, like most of the Jehovah's Witness doctrines, they'll take one scripture, isolated scripture, out of context, and then make a doctrine out of it. And if you look at the historical figure of Jesus, and if you say Jesus wasn't political, well, my friend, then you might need to read a little bit more, read the Bible, study history. Jesus was very political. His very presence was something that was going to upset this whole political religious system. Also got the attention of the Romans as well because of what he was teaching. And it was riling up the Jews so much that the Romans were also very interested in this guy who was really working people up. So one of the parts, basically this is the main scripture that they base it off of. So I'm going to read a couple of scriptures here from the book of Mark and also from John. Okay, these are the main ones that, but it's interesting here in, what I want to start out with first of all is Mark chapter, let's see here. I can't read my own handwriting, guys. I think it's 11 verse 17. Okay. And this is from the New King James Version of the Bible. And it says, "And Jesus answered and said to them, Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." And they marveled at him. So we all know what was happening in that particular scripture there. The Pharisees were trying to capture Jesus, trying to trap him. And it's interesting that even back then, there was a debate, or there was a negation to subjecting themselves to the authorities at that time. The Jews did not like being under Roman authority, and so they wanted to trap Jesus. And so, far from Jesus saying, well, stay away from them, don't do that, he said, well, if that's what they're asking for you to pay a tax, pay the tax. Whatever is to Caesar, God's things to God. So you can see that there was a sentiment that Jesus had, far from rebelling against the system. He was saying, subject yourself to it. But here's the scripture that the governing body really likes to use. In John 15, 18 to 24. Now, in here, I'm going to read this from uh, the New International Version. And the verses here that we want to read about and concentrate on are the world. Okay? The world. So in verse 24, I've been trying to make this video all day. Some days when all the forces of nature are just against us, I guess. Okay, so anyway, in chapter 24 it says, they hated both me and my Father. 25. But this is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason. Now, it's interesting because he said, you're no part of the world. We all know these verses, right? You're no part of the world. If you were part of the world would fight for its own, but you're not part of the world. They hated me before you. So, but what's interesting here is, what was Jesus talking about when he said world? Think about this for a moment, and it tells you right here. Don't have to have some Bible scholar knowledge or a PhD. Jesus gives you the answer. And remember that at this time, outside of the region of Israel, Judea, all that area, outside of that area, nobody knew who Jesus was. So he wasn't talking about the entire world, the planet Earth, as in the context that Watchtower uses it in recent years. He says there right at the beginning, he says, they hated you, speaking of the world, right? The world hated both me and my Father. And then he says, why? But this is to fulfill what is written in their law. Okay? So what world was he talking about? This was the Jewish system. He was talking about the region of Israel. Okay? And ironically, since very, very recently, Watchtower got rid of old light types and antitypes, there is no future application to this. Okay? And like I said, outside of that area, nobody knew who Jesus was yet. Jesus came to preach to that immediate area. First of all, to the house of Israel. And then his disciples and apostles later on would spread out through the entire earth with the gospel. But that didn't happen yet. So when Jesus talked about world here, you're no part of the world, he's talking about you're no part of this Jewish system anymore. And they will reject you. He was not talking about the whole planet. So then we have also in Romans, in Hebrews, in Acts, we have all of these different scriptures here where the apostles also talked about obedience and subjection to the authorities. Of course, we all know what Romans 13 says, 6 and 7. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. Hebrews 13:17. Pray for the authority. Jehovah's Witnesses friends, how many of you pray for your authorities to enlighten them, to govern in such a way that benefits the people? How many of you do that? It says pray for the authorities. Titus 3:1. Remind the people to be subject to rulers and authorities, to be obedient. And if you look at Romans 13, the first verse, That's where it talks about being subjection to the superior authorities, because they're placed in their relative positions by whom? God. So you look at the history of the Watchtower organization, you can see that they've always been very active politically. They've been active, they've been involved in many court cases that they appealed up to the superior court, the Supreme Court, which then changed legislation, created laws. That in itself is one of the most purest political acts you can do, through the judicial system, changing the legislation, making laws. Now, when we look at what, for example, Jesus was talking about, what Paul was talking about, what Peter was talking about, they weren't just simply leaving things in Jehovah's hands. Oh, well, whatever happens, happens. Leave it to Jehovah. They acted. If it meant getting involved politically, they did so. Watchtower their leaders didn't just sit around and wait for Jehovah. They went to the courts and they appealed and they appealed and appealed up to the Supreme Court and got laws changed or made. So we also have a very, very interesting, there's an example here with the Apostle Paul, and I wanted to read this as well. I think this is very interesting. In Acts chapter 25. If you read in Acts chapter 25, it's the account where Paul gets arrested and then he appeals to Caesar. He appeals directly to Caesar. Why did Paul do that? Do you know why Paul did that, my friends and Jehovah's Witness friends? Well, I looked up some information on the internet from a website, Words of Hope, or WOH.org, wordsofhope.org, which says Paul appealed to Caesar because as a Roman citizen, he had the legal right to bypass the Roman governor's jurisdiction and have his case heard directly by the emperor in Rome, seeking a fair trial and to spread the gospel in the imperial city, which then there's analysis of that, which had a divine purpose. God was using Paul for that. And then Paul, it would have already been prophesied that he had to die for the Lord, right? He'd be executed. So this was all part of God's plan. So again, Paul didn't just sit back, oh, I got arrested, oh well, leave it in God's hands. No, he got political. He got political. He used his rights. I'm a Roman citizen. I'm going to appeal. I don't want to deal with the Jews here. I don't want to be harassed by them. I don't want to deal with the local governor. Boom, right to Caesar. Right to the Supreme Court, right? The maximum authority. So Paul, on more than one occasion, used his Roman citizenship to fulfill God's purpose and to get out of trouble, basically. There was another one where they got arrested and they were going to whip them. And Paul asked the legal authority at that time if it was licit, if it was legal to flog a Roman citizen. And they got scared and they ended up letting him go because they didn't know that Paul was a Roman citizen. And he brought that up many times. One time when he was told that, oh, well, this person told him that I purchased my citizenship. And Paul said, I was born in it. So the reason why I bring these things up, guys, is you can easily see how having a political opinion, getting involved in politics, voting, which you have to register to vote anyway in the United States, all those kind of things, it's very, very easy to see how it can be a conscience decision. And that's why I think, and I don't know this with 100% assurity, but it's very possible that next month in the annual meeting in October, this could possibly be, or in the near future, if not right now, it will be in the near future, that political involvement, voting, all of that, military service, uh, could become a new light and just become a conscience matter. I think it's just one of those things that, hey, just, like most people do, keep it to yourself. And if your conscience tells you if that's okay, then go ahead and participate. And we've seen, I mean, it would be really, it really is hypocritical on the Watchtower's part to tell people not to get involved in politics when they have. Joining the UN was a political act. So I could very, very easily see them rolling back on that one, making that a conscience issue. I really actually believe, and we talked about the birthdays, that's a possible one. That's one that, that's going to hurt a lot of people. As I said before, it's going to hurt. We'll talk about that in another video. But that's going to be another one that's going to hurt, because a lot of us never got to have those when we were growing up. And when we were in schools, at that time, as students, it was very difficult being a Jehovah's Witness in school. We took a lot of flack because of not celebrating holidays. But I would say one of the last doctrines to go would be the blood issue, because I don't think they know how to get out of that one yet. That's a real delicate one, because of the fact that it has cost people their lives. So I don't think they know exactly how to work with that one yet and not have some legal consequences. But we'll see what happens, I guess. So we'll keep an eye out here on October. That's what everyone has in their crosshairs right now. What's going to happen? What will be the changes? So anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good start of your work week, everybody. Be blessed. I'll see you in the next one.